The time is 5 o'clock. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 2024 meeting of the Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors. Thank you all for joining us in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center and remotely via WebEx. I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy. With me in person today are my fellow board members, Amanda Bogner, Mike Kavanaugh, Matt Core, Sarah Howard, Janice Mulhoff, Craig Moody, and Mary Spurgeon. We also have President and CEO Javier Fernandez, Steve Bruckner, our General Counsel with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and members of our board meeting support staff. OPPD's executive leadership team and subject matter experts are also participating in today's meeting in person and via WebEx. Additionally, we currently have about 8 members of the public in person at the Civic Center and 8 members attending virtually on WebEx. That consists of OPPD, 16 online, even better. That consists of OPPD employees and members of the public. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I will now ask a member of OPPD's physical security team to provide the safety briefing for our location and for Javier Fernandez to provide other safety reminders.
Good evening. We'll do a quick safety briefing. As we know that if we had to evacuate the building, we'd use either the stairwells on either side of the room here. We'd immediately go outside. In the event of any severe weather, we'd use the stairwells to go down into the garage area where we would take shelter. There are AED, first aid, and emergency exit fire suppression materials located on both sides, and we have some additional AED and first aid materials located in the back. If you are witnessing our meeting from home, we always say it's a good idea to have those items accessible to you as well. Also, if anybody needs any assistance, please feel free to let OPPD members know or the deputy sheriffs that are in the room. And with that, I'll turn it over to the president.
Thank you, Josh. I'll touch on the psychological safety part of the briefing. You can see that in the middle of the page if you're watching online. There are 5 pillars that we usually remind our employees and stakeholders when we're engaging in conversations to have a psychological safe environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing ideas and we have a respectful dialogue. On Tuesday, I focused on multiple perspectives, and it's important to acknowledge that the topics that we often discuss are very, very complex. Rarely have I ever encountered a topic that just has one perspective. It's many different perspectives, and just acknowledging that my perspective is just as valid as someone else's, and my expertise is just as valuable as someone else's expertise, and come to the table acknowledging that there will be always multiple perspectives to discuss and debate, and we will compromise and get to a good solution. Another reminder of cybersecurity, to stay aware. The bad guys are never resting, and it's really easy to send phishing emails, and it's probably even easier for us to ignore that and click on a malicious link that could really have devastating consequences. So as we always do at OPPD, we have regular training to our employees and coaching when unfortunately people click on phishing emails to how do we identify and avoid putting the organization at risk. Next slide, please. In April, speaking of our safety, it's important, again, going back to the psychological safe topic, a cornerstone of a safe workplace culture is the ability to speak up when there's a safety concern. It doesn't really matter what the title you have in the company, who you are. If you see something that is dangerous, as our employees are beginning or they're planning for work, we continue to ask people, it doesn't matter whether you're an employee or a contractor or a bystander. If you see something that doesn't look right, stop the work. You have the authorization to stop the work and coach your teammates. The worst thing that could happen is you slow things down, but the best thing you can happen is you could save someone's life. Working from heights is a topic of attention for us. As the spring temperatures are coming to us, there will be a lot more work done at heights. So life-saving rule number 1 is utilize proper fall protection or restraint when working from heights. I mentioned on Tuesday, it's relatively easy to prevent the fall, but once you're falling, you lose all control. It sounds obvious, but it's a good reminder that preventing the fall, having the equipment to prevent the fall is incredibly important, and it's probably one of the number 1 things that we train our employees, especially line workers who are working on heights. And April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. Thousands of people are killed and hundreds of thousands more are seriously injured in distracted driving crashes every year. Just driving here, I passed many people who are on their phone, either texting and driving or talking with their phone in front of their faces, which is probably one of the most dangerous things that we can do. We need coaching, and just a good reminder that that is probably one of the most dangerous activities you can engage on a daily basis is getting behind the wheel. Don't make it more dangerous by being distracted by your phone. That concludes my safety briefing.
Thanks very much. Now let's run through the guidelines for the conduct of this meeting. This regular board meeting will follow the agenda made available to the public on OPPD.com. This meeting is being conducted in person with WebEx conferencing and is being recorded. Our board meetings have public comment periods on the agenda. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are part of the official public record. After the introduction of action items, board members will ask for clarifying questions from staff, and then I will ask for public comment. After public comment, the board will conduct its discussion of the matter and then vote. Also, before we adjourn, there will be an opportunity to comment on other matters of district business. We will take comments in the room first, then via WebEx. For in-person attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please line up behind the microphone in the center of the room. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we will use the timer that is in the room on the podium. Ms. Lane will signal when you have 30 seconds remaining, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please deliver them to Ms. Lane. For WebEx attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please send the meeting host a message using the chat feature or utilize the hand raise feature. Detailed instructions can be found on the OPPD website at the link shown on the screen. When I call on a member of the public to speak, please affirm that we can hear you before commencing with your comments. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we will use the timer on screen and signal when you have 30 seconds remaining, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please email them to corporatesecretary@oppd.com, and they will be received on our behalf. For all attendees, please direct your comments to me. I will either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. The board values and welcomes civil, respectful, clear, and concise communication from the public. During public comments, speakers should refrain from repetitious, profane, or irrelevant comments. Speakers shall refrain from polling the board, as such vote is not on the agenda and is prohibited by law. Ms. Lane, will you please take the roll call?
Director Bogner? Here. Director Kavanaugh?
Here.
Director Core?
Here.
Director Howard?
Here.
Director Mulhall? Here. Director Moody?
Here.
Director Spurgeon? Here. Director Williams?
Here.
Notice of the time and place of this meeting was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald, OPPD outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media. By displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on April 12, 2024. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on OPPD.com and in this meeting room. The board consent agenda action items are as follows. Item 6, approval of the December 2023, January 2024, and February 2024 financial reports. March 2024 meeting minutes and the April 18, 2024 agenda. Item 7, board policy revisions, BL1, board president and chief executive officer relationship. BL7, delegation to the president and chief executive officer. GP3, board job description. Resolution number 6639. Item 8, SD14, retirement plan funding monitoring report. Resolution number 6640. Item 9, SD5, customer satisfaction monitoring report. Resolution number 6641. Item 10, SD4, reliability monitoring report, resolution number 6642. Item 11, NC2, economizer ash segregation labor contract award, resolution number 6643. Item 12, award RFP 6134, Bennington expansion transmission construction, resolution number 6644. Item 13, North Omaha Station Unit 5, replacement LP turbine blades, engineer certification, resolution number 6645.
There are no corrections, changes, or additions to the consent agenda items. I need a motion and a second to approve these items.
So moved.
Second.
We discussed these action items at the all committee meeting on Tuesday, April 16th. Do any members of the public in the room have comments on these consent agenda items? If you'd like to make comment, please come to the podium in the center of the room.
David Begley, 4611 South 96th Street. Open your eyes before it is too late. With respect to, I'm speaking about items 7 and 9, board job description. What's missing? Well, I'll tell you what's missing. It's the fact that the board has a statutory duty to provide customer owners with low cost and reliable electricity. As I told you before, weigh matters carefully and think hardest about those that matter most. The OPPD board is ignoring what matters most. Your other item here, customer satisfaction monitoring. So Javier was in the Omaha World Herald on April 14th, and he says, we're going to make our customer owners wait years longer. This is with respect to the York County project. And that's just not acceptable to me. Well, OPPD customer owners have not been surveyed. I've told you before, you need to survey your customers and let them know what's going on about this net zero. People don't know about it. They don't know how much it's going to cost, and it's going to triple rates, it's going to lead to blackouts, and it will not save the planet from burning up in the year 2010, or excuse me, 2100. Your own consultant said it was going to cost $28 billion. So I deconstructed the Omaha World Herald story, and here at item 2, it said OPPD is committed to net zero carbon, but the customers, owners certainly aren't committed to it. They don't even know about it. I think 95% of OPPD's customers have no idea about this net zero policy and that it will triple their rates. If they knew about this and it would cause blackouts, they would be strongly opposed. So you've got the money, you need to survey your customers. Customer satisfaction is deeply tied to energy costs. And you've already agreed to a 10% increase, and it's going to go a whole lot higher. I've told you about the Center for the American Experiment, and they did their modeling for the states of Colorado, Wisconsin, and Minnesota about tripled rates. Well, here I have a nice little story I'm sure you're all going to read about California's experience with, they've got the third highest rates in the country. And the thing of it is, they've added all this solar and
30
wind.
seconds.
It hasn't reduced their carbon emissions, and it's just driven rates higher, 15% higher. So, I mean, the writing is on the wall. Solar and wind, they're expensive and unreliable. They don't do anything to lower carbon emission, and it leads to much higher rates. So you need to do your statutory duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments in the room about the consent agenda items? Are there any comments online about the consent agenda items?
David Corbin.
David, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just, and I know you can't answer questions right now, but I did hope that there would be some clarification about the turbine on station number 5 at North Omaha, and whether I listened at the committee meeting, but I thought I heard that it would be able to be converted, that same turbine would be able to be used for gas once that coal part is closed down. Just want to at some point verify that. Thank you.
Appreciate the question. I believe we do have an answer. CEO Fernandez.
Thank you for the clarification, the opportunity to clarify. And this is a very, very important piece of our portfolio. As you may remember, the plan that we have is sometime in 2026 for us to retire North Omaha units 1, 2, and 3, which are currently running on natural gas, which then is the requisite for us to retrofit units 4 and 5, which are currently running on coal, so that they can run on natural gas. We can't do that if we don't have good functioning turbines on units 4 and 5. So the retrofitting of unit 5 is not only necessary for current operations between now and 2026, but even more important, as we are counting on that unit to be in good working condition, so that we can then refuel that into natural gas. It is a very important part of our net zero carbon strategy. And so that's very, very important for us to make sure that we have those turbine blades in place and a good working unit on Unit 5.
Great, appreciate the clarification. Are there any other comments or online about the consent agenda items? Great. Seeing none, roll call.
Director Bogner?
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Director Corr?
Yes.
Director Howard?
Yes.
Director Mulhall?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Director Spurgeon?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Motion carried. The board discussion action item 14, determination as to matter of state law under Southwest Power Pool Tariff Resolution number 6646. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District as follows. The foregoing findings are incorporated into this resolution. The Board of Directors hereby finds and determines that the Eolian ESR projects are not authorized under Nebraska law. The Board of Directors hereby finds and determines that should FERC interpret the SPP tariff to require interconnection with an ESR that, as determined here, cannot be built under Nebraska law, a conflict will exist between FERC's interpretation of the SPP tariff and Nebraska law. The Board of Directors hereby directs the district's management and general counsel to take all necessary actions consistent with the board's findings and determination herein, including providing notice to FERC through the procedure set forth in Section 39.1 of the SPP tariff.
So move.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. So this topic is kind of a sticky wicket, to be honest. And so I want to clarify a couple things before opening up to board discussion. This topic has, the board has been kept abreast of this unfolding situation and was a topic of conversation during our closed session on Tuesday. It was in closed session at that point because of the attorney work product and the protections that exist around that. But now the board must take action, so we have to talk about it here. I want to acknowledge first the work that's been done by OPPD staff and Fraser Stryker navigating us through this. And I also want to make it really clear, this is about energy storage resources, but it is not a determination of how the district will use energy storage resources in the future. Both the board as well as management agree and are very supportive of that type of technology being part of our future. And we have energy storage resources on our system now. So to help us through this today, I'd like to invite Steve Bruckner up to talk us through the resolution and what we need to do.
Thank you very much, Director Bogner, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to address this board action item, and I'm happy to explain what the resolution is seeking and to answer any questions that you may have. The resolution itself is, as you no doubt noticed, quite detailed, and it really contains all of the factual predicates, all the background that has led us to where we are now, which is the request for the determination of state law that we're seeking from the board, and that is laid out on the screen and which was read by Ms. Lane just a few moments ago. OPPD has been engaged in discussions with a private developer of a standalone, actually 3 separate standalone battery energy storage resource projects, which would be located on OPPD's electric system if they were to be constructed. That process actually started a number of years ago, and the negotiations with respect to the generation interconnection agreement, a process that's provided under the Southwest Power Pool tariff, and of which OPPD is a transmission owner member, as you know, has been going on for a number of months, dating back to the latter part of 2023, with many extensions of the negotiations between the parties. The reason that we need this determination by the board of directors is that the proposed standalone energy storage resources that are sought to be constructed by this particular private developer are not authorized under Nebraska law as it currently stands. There are limited exceptions for privately developed renewable generation facilities. I think the board is generally aware of that, and those have been developed in Nebraska, and OPPD has led the way, frankly, in participating with those private developers in being an off-taker of many of those resources. Fortunately, the Southwest Power Pool tariff does include a process for the governing board of a public entity, which OPPD is, to make a determination regarding state law when there is a conflict between the state law and the Southwest Power Pool tariff, or a conflict between state law and the Southwest Power Pool tariff, or a determination that could be made by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on a particular issue. And that provision, which was incorporated into the SPP tariff at the request of OPPD and other public entities when OPPD came into the Southwest Power Pool tariff a number of years ago, was approved by the FERC. So it's incorporated into the tariff as a matter of federal law, and it allows the board to make a legal determination with respect to state law, and state law governs subject to a state court review process. So that's what we're asking of the board. We're asking that the board make this determination that the proposed energy storage resources by this private developer are not authorized by state law. And then that will trigger a process, as the resolution indicates, where our firm, working with management, will then present the matter to SPP as well as to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission as outlined in the relevant tariff provision. That's the long and short of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, no technical questions.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry. Just a couple, Steve. So, in the resolution, it says, quote, "The district cannot be required to take any action that would violate state law." So I want to make sure that I understand how the district is at risk there and what state law is. So, this company, I'm going to try and summarize to make sure we've got it. This company has a generation interconnection agreement for these 3 batteries, right?
That's right.
Yes, okay. And because those three systems are in our system, that I'm trying to understand how their action sort of pulls us into a situation where we're being compelled in some way to take action that would be against state law. So help me connect the dots between their action and how we get pulled into it.
Under the generator interconnection agreement process that's specified in the Southwest Power Pool tariff, there are 3 parties to any generator interconnection agreement, whatever generation asset may be at issue, whether it's a fossil asset, a renewable energy asset, what have you. OPPD is one of those 3 parties as the transmission owner.
Mhm.
The other 2 parties are the proposed generator,
Mhm.
in this case, the private developer, and of course, Southwest Power Pool as a transmission provider. And that's what pulls OPPD into it. And again, when OPPD joined Southwest Power Pool, it was made very clear in the tariff and continues to be included in the tariff that because OPPD is a creature of state law, a public power entity under state law and a political subdivision, it cannot be in a position at any time where it's doing something that's not consistent with state law. And that's where we are here. If it was a different kind of asset, a renewable energy asset, no issue, because that's been clearly authorized.
Right.
This has not been.
Okay.
Quick clarification, they have applied, they are seeking a generation interconnection agreement. They haven't quite finalized that yet.
Got it.
It
Well,
doesn't
that's
change the
correct.
argument here, but I
Yeah.
just want to, for the record, we.
Yeah.
Final
The
one.
final one? Okay. Got
Yeah, it has not been executed. None of the 3 have been executed. The process is ongoing, has been extended a number of times. OPPD, because it's obligated to participate in those negotiations has done so, but it has made it very clear to the developer what its position is.
Great. So with that in mind, and if they don't have the final agreement in place, help me understand why the board needs to take action now as opposed to as they get further along in that process?
You know, it's a very good question. The reason is that this process has gone on for a very long period of time.
Okay.
This particular private developer, for reasons that are unclear, simply has not agreed to abide by state law. We need to have this determination so that if the matter is presented to the FERC, we already have the determination of the governing board that while we certainly appreciate the potential that energy storage resources provide for the future, generally speaking, we have to comply with Nebraska law. And until the Nebraska legislature has authorized these types of privately developed facilities to be extant on our system, we have to comply with state law.
Great. I think I have one last question. You described the three parties in this Southwest Power Pool being the other one. I assume that we're working with them to ensure that they're clearly aware of the situation. I assume that there's action that they're taking as well to mitigate the issue, or help me understand.
They're certainly aware of the issue. Whether they're taking actions to mitigate
Yeah, I'm not
the
asking you to
situation is
speak on
what's
behalf
clear.
of them. Sorry. I don't
Yeah.
want you to do that. Okay. Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Any additional technical clarifying questions? Great.
Thank you.
Any members of the public in the room have a comment on this action item? So please approach the podium and the microphone. Seeing none, do any members of the public online have a comment on this action item?
David Corbin.
Just wondering, David Corbin, Nebraska Sierra Club, just wondering if there is, if OPPD is working on changing the state law or if that would solve this problem.
Is that your only comment? I'm going to assume that was it. We have a response.
We are not actively looking at amending state legislature. I think this is a very complex topic where many Nebraska utilities were all trying to figure out how best to integrate this type of resources into the grid. There are many aspects that need to be taken into account. And so I can tell you this is a topic of high level of discussion, but at the moment, and with the legislative session ending today, we're not seeking any changes for now. But I think this is something that as more and more of these energy storage resources continue to come online and different solutions come online, this is something that we will continue to discuss and coordinate with the industry here in Nebraska.
Great, thank you. Do any board members have any additional comments about this item? No. Great. I appreciate the dedication of staff to address this complicated issue while we continue to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technologies, including energy storage, to meet the growing needs of the people and businesses in our community. So thank you for your work on this. And with that, roll call.
Director Bogner,
Yes.
Director Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Director Core,
Yes.
Director Howard,
Yes.
Director Mulha,
Yes.
Director Moody,
Yes.
Director Spurgeon,
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next item on the agenda is the president's report.
Thank you, Chair Williams. I'll be brief. I'll try to be brief. Very, very active month, the month of March. That's what the report is going to be. Very interesting. You can see Nebraska City Unit 1, 2, and North Omaha Unit 4. All three units were available 100% of the time. But you can see that the capacity factor was low, 48, 53, and 57% respectively. And this is a very clear consequence of renewable resources on our system. And the shoulder months, both spring and fall, wind generation is very strong, and that helps us lower generation on our Nebraska City stations and North Omaha stations. So the lower capacity factors is a direct response to the high integration of renewables during these months of the year. North Omaha Unit 5 had a capacity factor of 0, in this case -1. It was actually taking power from the grid, and that's because in March, on March 1st, we began a planned outage for North Omaha Unit 5, so it was offline for the entire month of March. And as you know, the resolution that was approved earlier today with the consent agenda, there is more work to be done on that unit with the turbine blades that we need to replace. So we expect this unit to continue to be offline for a little longer and not have that capacity factor, the regular capacity factor in the next month or so. Going on to our balancing generation portfolio, one very important aspect of having all the renewable generation online is that we need to have balancing generation that helps us integrate that renewable generation. When the wind blows consistently, but it doesn't blow all the time. And so as we have wind generation coming offline, our units are called to help balance and smooth the generation across the footprint. And that's exactly what you see here with Cass County, Jones Street, and Sarpy County units. All of those units saw action. They were online at different times of the month. North Omaha units 1, 2, and 3 did not see any action. Units 1 and 2, we don't have gas available for those units during the month of March. That gas is used for heating purposes in the neighborhood for residential. North Omaha Unit 3 has the capacity, but it didn't run in the month of March, although I may have a different story for the month of April. We know it has run already in the month of April. Something very important to report is we have seen the Southwest Power Pool has issued 2 separate resource advisory events in this spring, which is very unusual. Resource advisory events usually happen during peak months, winter and summer. And what we are seeing is in the nation, there's this need for having a window of time when we take our units offline for maintenance. And there's more of that maintenance happening across the footprint. And so with the high heat that we've seen in recent weeks, we have seen the Southwest Power Pool has had to issue these resource advisories. So it's something that is important. We're seeing those changes, and we have to make sure that when we have our units out, we can time them well so that we can have them back online when we need them the most. Next item, our renewable portfolio performed extraordinarily well, mostly wind. You can see the capacity factor for renewables was 54%. Please take in mind that a big portion of our, or not a big portion, but about 80 megawatts of our renewable portfolio is hydro. So that accounts for that higher capacity factor overall. Wind capacity factor was almost 51%, which is really high. You can see, you've probably experienced that high wind in the month of March. Community solar with a capacity factor of 22%. As days are getting longer, we're starting to see that community solar capacity factor increase. A new item that I haven't reported in the past, but there was a comment last month on the board meeting about landfill gas. We have a landfill gas unit. It's a small unit. It's about 6 megawatts. It had a capacity factor of 97%. Those units are designed to run on an ongoing basis with landfill gas. Next slide, please. I am thrilled to present and report back to the board. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 2-3 months ago, when we talked about renewable energy credits and the program that we launched. On February 1st, to large commercial and industrial customers offering renewable energy credits. This month, OPPD obtained its first customer enrolled in the program. Renewable energy credits represent the right to claim the environmental benefit obtained from OPPD contracted renewable generators. It allows customers to offset their carbon emissions by up to 100% of the energy purchased from OPPD, enabling them to meet their sustainability goals and partnering with us as we are trying to do the same thing. Participation by the newly enrolled customer allows them to progress towards their goal of being net zero by 2050, which also aligns with the strategic directive we have from our board. Very important here to point out that funds obtained from the program will be used to support initiatives that reduce OPPD's carbon emissions across our operational footprint in support of our net zero goal. So It's a closed loop where these revenues will help us advance even further and faster our investments toward net zero. Eligible customers should reach out to their senior account executive to begin the enrollment process. We plan to make RECs available to residential and small business customers in the future. We're testing this out first with large industrial customers. To learn more about these, you can visit oppd.com/RECs. Next slide. It seems like it was a long time ago, but it wasn't. It was about 3 months ago that we were in sub-zero temperatures, minus 40-degree temperatures in the middle of January. Chartwell, which is an industry-wide organization that provides services to many utilities across the nation, they awarded OPPD the Silver Emergency Management Award for its response to Winter Storm Jerry in January of this year. The newly added emergency management category recognizes outstanding strategies and practices in emergency management, emphasizing comprehensive approaches to handling incidents like natural disasters, cybersecurity breaches, and equipment failures. OPPD prepared for the weather and resource advisory several days prior to the expected event, and this mobilized effort between many internal groups not only help with manage the impact, but readied themselves so that our customers were also engaging with us for what was to come. What you see here, of course, you can see a technician working on one of our turbines, and we were worried about freezing temperatures and freezing systems. The two pictures on the right are at our Nebraska City station, where we had to shut the units down because of lack of water, and that additional humidity that was coming off the vent turned into ice. So we had a lot of ice accumulating on the roof. We had employees, hundreds of employees, 24/7, trying to melt that ice to make sure that the structure was not compromised. And you're doing that in temperatures of -30, -40. We could keep our employees out between 10 and 12 minutes at a time, but we were able to make that work. And I think that's part of the reason why we got that award, and very proud of how the team worked. Something that I may have mentioned before, but maybe not in the public. For this event, we didn't only have our generation employees who work in the generation side of the house. We had transmission and distribution employees. We had underground employees who typically don't work on our generation plants, but they came and they responded to the call, and it was a true one-team response for OPPD and our customer owners. Last, but certainly not least, remembering those we lost, Michael Johnson died on December 10, 2002, from injuries sustained when he fell from the pole on which he was working. We just talked about fall protection earlier today. That's one of the reasons why we're so focused on that. Michael was 37 years old, and he had been with the district for 1 year. He was a 20-year member of the Ashland Fire Department and had been recently elected assistant chief. According to Fire Chief Rick Roholz, he was a kind of person that people like to follow. He did it in a way just by setting a good example. Michael was survived by his wife, Janine, his son, Paul, his daughter, Taylor, and his mom, brother, and sister. And that, Chair Williams, concludes my safety briefing, my President's report.
Thanks very much for that. Now we have an opportunity for comment on other items of district business. Please approach the podium and the microphone in the middle of the room.
David Bagley, 4611 South 96th Street. I told you previously that Steve Bruckner and I were in the class of 1979 at Creighton University, and we were extremely lucky to become mutual friends with Father John Schlegel. And Father Schlegel was very influential on both of us, and he said a lot of things, and I remember what he said. One thing he told us was, get involved in your community. So that's part of the reason why I'm here tonight, and have been. Another thing he said was, a Jesuit education teaches you how to think, not what to think. And so that really resonated with me. So I used to sit in the alumni library, and this was pre-internet, and they had all these magazines. And so instead of doing my schoolwork, I would look at these magazines, and they had these reports about global cooling. And I thought, well, this is terrible. And I was concerned about it. So, and then, it changed into global warming. And then we had Al Gore saying, within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro in 2005. 2024, snow's still there. He also said, oh, the ice was going to melt on both the poles. Well, dead wrong. Arctic, Antarctic, ice is the same. So I've told you many times that, in my opinion, catastrophic man-made global warming is the biggest scam in the history of the world. Now, if you're not familiar with the movie director and screenwriter, David Mamet, you should be. He is an expert on scams, and he's done 3 or 4 movies on them, and I'd recommend you watch them all. So in his recent book, he wrote, all con games are essentially the inculcation of greed coupled with misdirection, the pigeon drop. Oh, look, is this your wallet? Essentially identical to the great housing bubble. Would you like this housing for nothing? So what has happened here with this global warming scam is Wall Street figured out we can make a whole bunch of money by getting federal tax credits from the federal government. And we can sell them, we can bundle them and get money for free. And there was no conspiracy. I mean, the Wall Street people, they're the smartest people in the room, no question about that. And they all have a singular purpose of making money. So they got the tax credits. And then there are people such as this board who thinks, oh, we're going to save the planet from burning up in the year 2100. And
30
so
seconds.
these two things work together, and you're on the path to spending $28 billion all for nothing. So wise up, figure out this really is a giant scam. You don't have to go along with this. And I particularly speaking to you other 6 board members, you don't have to agree with directors Moody and Williams. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comment. I would point out that the board has addressed this in the past. I'd refer you to Strategic Directive 7. The OPPD Board of Directors recognizes scientific consensus that climate change is occurring and that greenhouse gas emissions, including carbon dioxide from human activity, contribute to climate change impacts. If you have questions about the definition of the scientific consensus on climate change, there is ample evidence online. This is not a debate. That's not the point here, but I would just point out that this is something we have covered in the past. And so, we have guidelines for public comments, and repetitive comments are not necessary. The board has addressed this in the past, and it is covered in our policy manual. Are there any other public comments in the room?
My name is Susie Papadopoulos at 2500 California Plaza, and I'm a student at Creighton University. Given that Nebraska's economy and residents rely heavily on food production and farming, it is critical that we actively protect these lifestyles and careers of these individuals. Climate change also has several health implications, which would directly result in higher healthcare costs if this is not addressed efficiently. In a joint editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine on climate change, the authors called climate change the greatest threat to global public health is the continued failure of world leaders to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. For one, climate change will have increasing negative effects on food security, putting individuals around Nebraska at risk, and would exacerbate the challenges of those already living with food insecurity. Many of us may understand the effects of climate change on our Earth, but not exactly how these directly implicate the health effects of ourselves and our neighbors. For example, air pollution and extreme heat have direct causes of cardiovascular issues and asthma, or how our implications on water and food supply lead to malnutrition and diseases such as cholera due to polluted water, just to name a few. This is according to the CDC, by the way. Climate change also causes soil composition to change, decreasing the nitrogen concentration and resulting in poor quality of crops. This would also be destructive to the nutrient levels of our food, which can have 2 effects. 1, the health impacts would be drastic, and 2, it would also require farmers to use more harsh chemicals to ensure the production of a limited crop, putting them at a higher risk. As you can see, this is inherently a social justice issue. Climate change poses an imminent threat to the economy as well as the health of the residents of Nebraska, and elevated action needs to be taken. My fellow students will elaborate on this issue and our demands for OPPD.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Good evening. My name is Kate Williams. I live at 307 North 33rd Street.
My name is Ben Blickham. I am a student at Creighton University.
Caroline Brandeberry, 402 North 38th Ave. As students of Creighton University and our education, it has become clear that climate change is one of the biggest issues facing our generation. In our lifetime alone, the Earth's surface temperature is committed to rise 1.5 degrees Celsius at least, leading to continuous catastrophic impacts on communities close to our homes and across the world. While While OPPD has made promising commitments to making changes toward a more sustainable future, it is clear that these promises are not moving quickly enough to reflect the severity of the situation and the ethical obligations of those of us who have contributed more historically to the planetary emergency.
As members of the board, many of which have vocalized dedications to mitigate these issues facing our community in your campaigns, we have not seen the action in the ways we have hoped from your constituents. We are asking for interim metrics to make sure that the goals you have set forth are met within a timeframe you originally committed to. International agreements recognize wealthy societies like ours who have disproportionately committed to emissions driving climate change have an obligation to reach net zero more quickly to stay within their fair share of emissions. Decarbonization of other sectors of the economy through electrification depends on electrical utilities getting there first. Because of this, we're asking you to commit to a definitive and planned timeline of reduction of carbon emissions based on science and climate justice principles.
We are asking you to commit to 80% carbon emission reduction by 2030 and 100% reduction by 2040 for your sake as well as our own. This will require an accelerated phase out of the coal at Nebraska City. The longer it takes to get there, the more cumulative emissions are produced. OPPD is currently projecting emissions to increase before falling at a slower rate than the slowest pathway to decarbonization model in 2021. Getting there in 2040 as opposed to 2050 would create a more livable and thriving community in Nebraska by reducing health impacts and meet our environmental justice obligations to communities around the world who have contributed the least but are the most vulnerable to these climate impacts. Finally, the American Public Power Association has identified environmental justice as a critical consideration in the energy transition, but SD7 currently lacks any explicit instructions to make addressing inadequacies in environmental impacts as a priority for OPPD. Explicit language promoting environmental equity
30
and
seconds.
environmental justice should be added to SD7. Our ask of you all on the board is to vote yes on interim metrics later in this year and cooperate in environmental science and justice as key components to the SD7 initiative. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Ryan Wishart, 912 North 49th Street. I'm also an environmental sociologist at Creighton University, speaking on behalf of myself. First, a point of clarification, since Father John Schlegel was mentioned earlier, I would note that he signed the American College and University President's Climate Commitment in 2010, committing Creighton to climate neutrality by 2050. When OPPD undertook its Pathway to Decarbonization study in 2021, a key part of the process was consideration of the importance of adaptation to future changes in technological and economic conditions. And we have certainly seen changes in those conditions, but our scientific understanding of the climate system and the impact of policy responses will also continue to evolve and need to be incorporated by the board as they develop interim metrics. The United Nations, global scientific institutions, and the US federal government leadership all agree net zero electricity in 2050 is too late for communities like ours to meet their ethical obligations and material contributions to climate stability, setting a deadline of 2035 in light of newest evidence. The UN Secretary General Guterres called on rich nations to accelerate their net zero goals in light of the most recent IPCC scientific findings a year ago. Quote, developed countries must commit to reaching net zero as close to 2040 as possible. Ensuring net zero electricity generation by 2035 for all developed countries and 2040 for the rest of the world. These plans must clearly detail actual emissions cuts for 2025 and 2030. A report for the UN from the Potsdam Institute and Exeter University concluded late last year that rich countries must cease coal use by 2030 and oil and gas by 2040 to give the world a chance of limiting warming to 1.5 C by leaving enough in the carbon budget to allow developing nations to meet the 2050 net zero goal. In line with these global findings by scientists and agreements about shared and differentiated responsibilities of nations like the US, the Biden administration has maintained a goal of 80% fossil-free electricity by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Summarizing the stark shortfalls of emissions reductions in high-income countries in the Lancet Planetary Health Journal, some of our board members with nursing and health backgrounds may be familiar with the Lancet's main journal. Authors Vogel and Hickel summarize, quote, if high-income countries exceed their fair share carbon budgets, they either exacerbate the breakdown or appropriate the carbon budget shares of lower income countries, or most likely do both. So I'd encourage the board to take these evolving understandings of what net zero goals mean as they develop their interim metrics. Thank you.
So old school with my paper. Laverne Train, 114th and Maple. We're gathered here in the name of the Lord. Oh, I'm sorry, that's on Sunday. I'm sorry. I got a different speech today. What am I here for today? Well, you want to double your capacity, but have you been thinking about how you're going to move that capacity around? Are you going to build more lines, get more right-of-ways? How are we going to do this? And I haven't really heard that been discussed with this doubling. So I brought you a white paper for reconductoring, tensioning, and advanced conductor technology for increasing the capacity of transmission lines. And to keep it short, basically, the beauty of reconditioning, reconducting your current lines is you don't have to stand in the line at the Southwest Power Pool because you're just replacing the current lines. And so you can double your capacity. It ends up being half the price. Then getting new right-of-ways and new poles and all the rest. So I just wanted to, I want to share this white paper with you. I really hope the board, I'm assuming the engineers at OPPD are well aware of this technologies, but I want the board to be really aware of it also. So when it comes up, you know what the heck they're talking about. And this way you can double the capacity of your current lines when you double the output. And like I said, you don't have to wait. So I would like to, in light of me being my chaplain of my Boy Scout group when I was young, also a Eucharistic minister of the Catholic Church, I'd like to bring lots of blessings to OPPD, its management, its board, its employees, for ushering in a cleaner energy future, even though you're given a very dirty energy past. So I want to, lots of blessings on you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you for your comments, and I would refer you to the end of the agenda on Tuesdays. The last item is usually generation and transmission. So we do discuss that item regularly, and we'll make sure and include this in the record and pass it around to directors. Thank you. Are there any other public comments in the room? Are there public comments online?
David Corbin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Thank you. David Corbin, Nebraska, speaking on behalf of Nebraska Sierra Club. First of all, I won't repeat the things that were said earlier about the interim metrics and the environmental justice, but only to say that the Sierra Club concurs with those ideas. It was also nice to be able to find out that we could speak at the all committee meetings. It was a first for me. And it's always nice to be able to comment on things that normally don't come up at the board meeting. So I appreciate that. It was a surprise to me, and I did talk to a couple of board members, that it wasn't publicly discussed that SPP was meeting in OPPD headquarters and was chaired by one of OPPD's members. One would think that you would be proud of that, that it's held here, that one of your own is chairing that group. I actually found out through the National Sierra Club about this meeting, even though the meeting took place in my own backyard. Today was another long meeting with the Omaha Climate Action Plan. I was glad to see OPPD members there. I want to point out that today we were trying to figure out partners that we could work with to meet some of the goals. And of course, a large number of those goals would require OPPD to be partners. And so I know that you've already worked on some grants with the city of Omaha, and I hope that we'll be able to do even more. And I'll just say last thing, since some reading assignments have been given, about climate change in Creighton University, you might, if you haven't read it already, you might want to read Father Hendrickson's op-ed that was on Easter about care for the earth and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments online?
John Pollock.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
John Pollock, 1412 North 35th Street, Omaha. First, I would like to indicate my general agreement with the young people who took their time to come and talk to you today. Their future is at stake a lot more than mine is, and also the points raised by Professor Wishart. I am in support of interim metrics. I would also like to say briefly that David Begley made some points earlier. While Mr. Begley was reading magazine articles about global cooling in the late 1970s, I was part of a research group that was pushing that outlook. I was a graduate student in Center for Climatic Research and Meteorology in the mid-1970s. I became dissatisfied with the research methods of that group and decided to switch to an honest job in weather forecasting where I could be right or wrong and find out the results rather quickly. I also continued to follow the science on the issue, and by the 1990s, it was quite clear that what was always a rather minority scientific viewpoint was clearly wrong, and I'm glad that the board has recognized the role of carbon dioxide. In terms of the upcoming weather, of course, this is severe weather season. We are not seeing any major weather systems coming through in about the next week. However, there are some indications that in approximately 8 to 10 days, we're going to have the next larger scale weather system emerging from the Pacific and crossing the mid-continent. Unfortunately, it's too soon to tell if and whether that will interfere with Earth Day. It's quite clear that it'll be warmer again. What's not clear is how it'll be timed relative to whatever fronts and thunderstorms may be coming through the area. Thank you. And this will conclude my time.
Thank you. Are there other public comments online? Great. Thanks very much, everyone, and happy Earth Day to you on Monday, and I hope to see you at Earth Day Omaha next Saturday. Meeting is adjourned.